Hello everyone, welcome to the Amit Kukreja Show. This is where I, Amit Kukreja, a current startup 23-year-old founder, try to get you, the person watching or listening, to care about my startup. And the only way I can get you to care about my startup is by getting you to care about me. So I'm not going to tell you about my startup. I'm going to tell you about the current technology and business news that exists in the world and break that down and give my own perspective and unique analysis. And hopefully it's interesting enough for you to care about the sponsor of today's episode of the Amit Kukreja Show. Had something in my eye there. Which is Audia, my startup. And I'm not going to tell you about our sponsor. I'm going to leave it in the description if you actually care about the show and the show got you some value. Maybe I'll be lucky enough for you to go check out what my startup is, and then you can go sign up to reserve your spot because we're launching in April 2021. We're going to be limited to about 300 to 500 creators exclusively on the platform. Anyway, go check it out. Hopefully it is meaningful to you. And if you don't want to check it out, then let's get into today's news. This is the second show, by the way. This is the second episode of this show that I've recorded. I decided to start it a week ago, and now it's in production. I like going like that. I like being fast-paced. I mean, like, I got an idea. We're going to go implement it. We're going to see what happens, and then, whatever happens, happens. But we're going to at least try, and I think I'm getting better at being, like, someone who can, like, host and introduce stuff, and, it feels kind of interesting. It's definitely weird. It's like, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It's like, I've kind of done that before, but not on, like, a episodic kind of show type of thing, so pretty cool that we're able to do that. Anyway, yeah, guys, super excited to be back on the show. Let's get into today's stories. First story I want to cover that I want to give my perspective on is Bumble, the dating app. And it's not really a dating app because it's a lot more than that. So we're going to talk about that and get into that discussion right now. Bumble is going public. Well, it actually is public by the time you're watching this. And Bumble founder and CEO Whitney Wolfe Herd is one of the very small amount of women founders that have been able to actually lead a company public, which is a sad thing that exists in 2021, but it's an amazing thing to give her credits and roses right now so that she can smell those roses, because you need to give people the roses while they can smell them. This is an amazing accomplishment, specifically because Bumble, not only is it a company that is led by a woman. In Silicon Valley tech startups, there's not a lot of companies led by women and minorities. So the fact that one of those identities was able to go lead a company public into the actual public markets is an amazing thing. But another reason this is important is because the competition that Bumble was against. Like, Bumble was not competing against, little stupid dating apps here and there. Bumble was competing against the giant of all giant dating apps, which is Tinder. And Tinder is one of those dating apps that has existed for a very long time and has basically had a monopoly on dating for a pretty long time. Obviously, in the beginning, it was like, Match.com and eHarmony and all that stuff in the early ages. But Tinder is what really resonated with the millennial generation to a different extent. So Bumble is public. I think the really cool news about this is that it's important to understand the sort of infrastructure of Bumble. They're not only a dating app, but they're also a networking app and networking has two elements. So they have Bumble Business and Bumble Friends. So people can go on Bumble not only if they want to find like a companion, but they can also go to Bumble if they want to find a business relationship, a networking relationship, or just a friend. I've used Bumble in the past before from the romantic side of it. This was like 2-3 years ago, back when I was like a sophomore in college. Don't really use any of those dating apps anymore, but I don't know if I'm trying to say like I don't need them anymore or nothing, or I'm just so focused on my grind I can't focus on girls right now. But anyway, yeah, Bumble is one of those things that's really, really cool. So I think there's a couple of things here to discuss. I do see Bumble as a bigger thing than just dating. When you think of Tinder, the brand is synonymous with dating, which is sort of like good for it because then it becomes like the market leader in that one space. But I also think that's not the best thing in the world for Tinder, because if you are truly this like peer-to-peer networking site where you can just swipe right or swipe left in order to get notified on certain things, I feel like expanding outside of that is really, really important. And Bumble, to me, seems like it has the capacity to actually expand beyond just dating. Obviously, dating is its biggest source of revenue, but other things could be really, really big as well. So I'm going to get back to that in a second, because there's a couple of things where Bumble could be uniquely in a good position to be acquired. But another thing is that this whole dating app is based upon the idea that women choose first. right? Women message first. Basically, Whitney, the CEO and founder, the problem that she had when she was working with dating apps back in 2012, 2013 was that there was just a bunch of like thirsty guys with like horrible pickup lines that were messaging first. And they were saying some really, crappy stuff and bad stuff and aggressive stuff and vulgar stuff, things of that nature. So the entire premise or like philosophy for the application is, can we implement a system where women have the power to actually be able to go decide if they want to be courted or not, or essentially do the courting themselves. People told me that the word courting is like an old word or something. I feel like courting is a very, like when you court someone, you're trying to get their, attention. Like, I feel like that's not like 1920s, or I don't know. I think that's a good word to use. Anyway, so that's the real differentiating variable of this application. I think they've obviously gone through the whole women empowerment branding angle, and outside of it being a branding angle or a marketing ploy, it really truly is baked into the essence of the technology of itself, right? Like, unless you are a woman, you cannot message first. And the whole idea, like, people are like, well, why don't you just lie about being a woman? It's like, well, if I'm a guy and I'm trying to get with girls, and I want girls who want guys, like, I can't lie about that. Like, that makes no sense. So overall, it's been an entire application and business model that has proved people wrong in terms of its ability to actually scale, primarily based upon this philosophy that it could actually do what it needed to do. Bumble went through some tough times in the beginning in terms of just getting through the entire thing. The co-founder went through multiple companies. They went through Tinder. They went through Match.com. They had like a whole bunch of things that they went through in the early stages, but once they were finally at Bumble and scaling Bumble, it ultimately got to the point where it's at today, where it's, I believe, what is it at, the $70 stock price? Bumble stock price is, what we got? $75. Not bad. That's a really that's crazy, bro. Like it had a $2.5 billion initial public offering. That means the dating app was valued at $8.2 billion, but shares have been increased from that. That's amazing. That's unbelievable. Their shares soared 75% after its IPO, making its 31 founder a rare self-made woman billionaire, which is kind of wild. But that's sort of my thoughts on Bumble. I think it's a pretty cool thing. The thing I was going to get to in terms of networking was that Bumble potentially has a ploy here where they can either be acquired by LinkedIn or they can compete against LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is obviously this like insane social network for business and marketing, so it's going to be very hard to just compete against them. But that's what we said about Bumble and competing against Tinder in the early ages, right? So like, I do see a possibility for Bumble to be able to have a unique differentiating angle, especially if people are tired of LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn's annoying. Like, I'll just put it at that. Like, LinkedIn's not a fun place to consume content. Maybe this is just my experience, but I've tried posting content on there. I've tried consuming it, and it's just annoying. Not only are the messages just filled with spam of all these ridiculous network marketers trying to get you to join some pyramid scheme or some nonsense, but it's also just like, the content there is not as diversified as you would think it is, right? Like, if you go on Instagram, you can find a bunch of different things. On LinkedIn, it's literally like, I would like to thank all my friends and family for helping me get this internship at Microsoft. It's like, no one gives a fuck. Like, no one cares that you're working at Microsoft. Like, it's just not, I mean, I don't know. It's not the most interesting thing. Obviously, it's like a digital professional revenue, and it's a really good sales B2B communication tool. But in terms of a content hub, there's a lot of great content on it, and there's a lot of people probably making a lot of money off their content off of it. It's just not been the most exciting thing, I think, at least also for the millennial generation. So if Bumble has a way to increase the value of the entity that is Bumble, that is not synonymous with simply dating like Tinder is, to potentially go after a market opportunity in which millennials would be more interested in a business networking, sort of more media integrated application, I do see that as a potential opportunity and something that could be, probably beneficial for the application in and of itself. Last March, Bumble reported a 23% increase in sent messages in New York City and a 26% increase in San Francisco in just a 10-day period. This was during COVID. So obviously COVID also helped people who were at home, who weren't able to like go out and traditionally date, meet each other. So not only did COVID help Bumble, but they had a 70% revenue growth in 2019. Basically, it's a big league player right now, and excited to see where Bumble is going to go, where it's going to fly like a bee, right? Because it's a bumble bee, bees and the birds. That's about sex and okay, anyway. Okay, let's get into our next story for today. This next story is really, really interesting. Amazon, Google, and Salesforce are investing in a $28 billion company. And that $28 billion company is called Databricks. So Databricks is really important to understand. The reason I wanted to cover this story, even though like it's a boring story outside of the headline, it's like, oh my God, they're investing in a $28 billion company. This is not a company that's like going to be the next Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. It's not like a social media giant, but it is a company that is highlighting, I think, something that's very important to understand in today's day and age, which is that if you control the data or help companies control the data, there is just a ridiculous amount of money to be made in that space. Databricks software basically helps companies prepare data for analysis and artificial intelligence models. So they're really big on this AI stuff, and they're really big into crunching data. So companies like Facebook, like Amazon, like Microsoft, like Google, right? These are companies that not only take in enormous amounts of data, they have to store that data somewhere. Because Facebook, their entire business model is like, what do you like? And what advertisement can we show to you that is most targeted, so you get to click on that ad, so that the advertiser gets an ROI from that advertisement, so that they spend more money on Facebook trying to advertise to you. This is why Facebook is in such a big sort of like boxing match with Apple based upon the privacy stuff, and I'm going to talk about that in another story coming up on the show. But Facebook's business model, Google's business model, which is all advertising, Amazon business model, which is giving you the right shit for you to buy off their store based upon data, is all contingent upon if they have the most relevant and accurate data that they can put in front of your face, or that they can use to put something in front of your face for you to make an action on. Databricks is a company that is condensing that data to create as many new and more beneficial artificial intelligence models, so that when they consume millions and millions of components of data or hours of data or whatever other metric of data that they get, they can break that down and produce accurate results. It's very similar to a company called Snowflake that went public back in the summer of 2020. That is able to really help a lot of these big companies. So Databricks, really, really important company. This article here says the transaction, which values Databricks at $28 billion, shows the top 3 U.S. cloud providers recognize that the company represents an opportunity similar to Snowflake, which was another firm with cloud software that helps companies manage data. It's really important, I think, here to recognize that. So Databricks has had $425 million of revenue year over year. They were valued at $6 billion, I think, a couple months ago, and now they're already valued at $28 billion. And Amazon, Google and Salesforce, they're coming in at their Series G round. So we went through A, B, C, D, F, so we're already at Series G. So this is before the company has gone public. These big, mega corporations are putting another $1 billion into this company simply because they think that this company is going to be one of those companies that controls the world's data. And I think that's just really important to understand that, like, Amazon doesn't really control your data. They have other companies they work with that also condense and allow Amazon to control your data. Like if Databricks, Salesforce, Snowflake, if these companies didn't exist, it would be incredibly complicated and a little bit more difficult for some of the bigger companies that we have in the world right now to accurately model and understand how data is being used in a way to accurately sell or advertise or do whatever they need to do. So while Amazon and Google and all this, they have all this data, they're really giving a lot of leeway to companies that help them manage this data. And to me, I thought this story was just super important, especially because the CEO, Ali Ghodsi, said that we're 100% cloud native. That means they're operating purely in the cloud, right? So we're transitioning the entire economy from a service-based center where you have hundreds and hundreds of servers to a cloud-based center where more and more companies are recognizing that if their data can be stored through a cloud computing infrastructure, the startup cost for them to actually get their business onto the runway just becomes fundamentally lower. And the reason why it's also really important to me is because that's what we're doing at my startup, right? I'm not going to talk about my startup, don't worry. But the point is, when we initially had to start getting things rolling on my startup, I talked with my co-founder, and I don't know that much about the technology stuff. I'm learning a lot more about the technology stuff. I'm more about the business, marketing, communication, mission, vision, all that fun stuff. And I don't know that much about the technology stuff, but he told me a lot about AWS. And basically, AWS is really what makes the money for Amazon. Like Amazon makes money off selling shit, but they make way more money off companies giving them money so that companies can host their data on Amazon's web services cloud computing software. Basically, AWS is this product that if you need to store massive amounts of data in, which every company needs to do, especially software companies, which is the company that we're building, then that means how do you condense that data? 10, 15 years ago, you have to have massive like buildings that have all this storage center and have all these servers that get overheated and all this stuff. And that would be really expensive. And now with AWS, I mean, you could have theoretically 5,000, 6,000 users on a product and be paying a couple $100 a month while those users are posting content on the platform or using the platform in some way in which a lot of content or data is being collected. So it's really amazing that the price to run a startup has significantly decreased simply because of these cloud computing softwares. And then even bigger companies are now helping Amazon with AWS and Salesforce understand the data and crunch that data into an even stronger, more efficient mechanism to get that data to, the people that need to use the data effectively. I've been saying data a lot. But yeah, I just wanted to cover that story because I think that's pretty amazing. AWS has really helped our startups start, and it's been like really a blessing because 10 years ago, we would not have been able to do what we're doing right now based upon what we're doing with AWS. So the money is not only in the content, the money is in the data and the infrastructure that actually collects all the content. All right, our next story for the day. Very interesting one. Disney Plus. 95 million people just cannot leave Hannah Montana or Wizards of Waverly Place alone. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Disney Plus has passed 95 million streaming subscribers. And that to me is quite literally insane. It's really important to put this in context, okay? And here's the stat that's going to, I think, put this in context for everybody. It took Netflix 9 years to reach 95 million subscribers. It took Disney 14 months. So that's the crazy thing to really understand here, that the amount of time it took one of the biggest streaming giants in the world, or probably the biggest streaming giant in the world, Netflix, to actually receive that much subscribers and attention and revenue, it took Disney 14 months. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this happened, and this goes into my larger point about why I think Disney Plus is going to win. Do I have a Disney Plus subscription? Yes. Now, I have a Disney Plus subscription not because I care that much about Disney Plus, but because Verizon gave it to us for free, because I have Verizon Fios and my whole family uses it. So that means that we have Disney Plus for free. I don't use Disney Plus. I don't watch Disney Plus, but here's why I think it's winning. A, Disney's catalog of content is beyond this world. I mean, like, the type of content they have goes from The Lion King to Wizards of Waverly Place to the Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol. So like the things that we grew up on, at least if you're, at least 26 and under. And if you're older than that, then you definitely grew up on that stuff on cable television or through VCRs or through DVDs, was the Snow Whites and the Wizards of the Waverly Place and the Lion Kings and the Mickey Mouse and the Donald Duck and the Goofy. I don't know what the name is. Goofy. It's just Goofy. I don't know what Goofy Goose. I don't know why I was going to say Goofy Goose. But those are the nostalgic elements of Disney Plus that have really catapulted it into a next level. And that's why I personally think it was able to reach 95 million within 14 months. The catalog of content they have and the storytelling content that is just so different from everything else in the world is what makes Disney Disney, right? It's what makes Disney what it really is. They are a storytelling company at the highest of levels, and Disney will tell you this because what they sell outside of the parks and this stuff, and we'll get into that, are stories, and they sell classic, timeless stories that stand the test of time. And that's the thing that I've been recognizing when it comes to content, as I've been really trying to understand content more, is if you are a personality or you're a communicator or you're a brand that can stand the test of time because of what your brand message represents, because of the content that you put out there, because of how you have told your story, then you're going to win no matter what. Like, you are always going to win because time is undefeated. So the question becomes, can your work stand the test of time? And because Disney has been able to have their content stand the test of time, that's why 95 million people in 14 months came to the service. Like, there's only so many biz dev deals you can do with like Verizon and putting Hulu and ESPN together and all that stuff, and as a bundle. Like, at the end of the day, if the content's not attractive to people, they're just not going to come. They're not going to pay the $8 a month that it takes to watch Lion King on demand, right? And the fact that they can have that in their back pocket. The fact that they can have, the ultimate Christmas present, which is one of those classic Disney movies that came out in the 2000s, in their back pocket, is what makes Disney incredible. If you think about artists like Michael Jackson, the reason people still listen to Michael Jackson at the tune of like 30 million streams on Spotify a month is because his music stands the test of time. Like, it's just that simple. If your content stands the test of time, you are going to be legendary and immortal. And there's going to be a lot of money on the back end for whatever person is running your company or in charge of your content catalog in the future. So the reason I thought this was really important is just to talk about how Disney did this. Their earnings per share were 32 cents adjusted versus a loss of 41 cents expected, which is pretty decent. And their revenue was 16.25 billion versus 15.9 billion. So they exceeded expectations. This is according to Rinfinitiv. But they obviously still don't have their parks open. And that's the big thing right now for Disney, is like their company is purely staying alive based upon its direct to consumer leverage. Like, if Disney Plus did not exist, the stock price is at like 190 right now. I think the stock price might be down to like $90 as it was in March, because the parks aren't open, or if the parks have been open, they're not open to the full scale which they can be, which is a lot of revenue for Disney. Outside of the media part of the business, they're selling physical tickets to people to come at the tunes of hundreds of thousands per month. That is like just cut, right? And that's been cut for about a year. So streaming really represents the strong amount of Disney's revenue right now and Disney's ability to actually grow. Now, they also have this service called Hotstar, which my mom uses as well, that launched in India. So the average price per customer or revenue per customer has been decreased because the price of Hotstar in India is cheaper than purely Disney Plus in America. But the revenue that overall Disney Plus is able to bring in with Hotstar as well has been pretty big, at the tunes of the billions and billions of dollars. So yeah, I think that thing is really important. I think that the thing that's going to be big here now is like, does Disney Plus recognize that the old media business, the Disney channels of the world, the ESPNs of the world, are not suitable anymore, or just don't matter that much anymore in the context of what they're actually trying to build? And this is the thing that's really important to understand. Disney makes a lot of its money off content, right? A lot of its money off content has been primarily based off of selling advertising during TV commercials. People are cutting the cord on TV. ESPN had like 110 million subscribers in 2009. Now it's down to like 83 million. Why? Because people are cutting the cord. I cut that. We don't have cable at our house anymore. Not only can we illegally stream basketball games online, which is the only thing I care about watching, most of the content that we want to see, so like First Take, which is a good debate show that I like on ESPN, it's on YouTube. And it's really easy to just consume that on YouTube without having to deal with anything. So I think it's very important to recognize how their entire business model is changing. The question now becomes, are they going to go all in? And I don't know, because there's a lot of money still in the traditional established legacy media business. There's a lot of advertising dollars there. It's much easier and much more expensive for an advertisement on TV versus on like social media. And I guess they have to do the numbers, but I don't know if 95 million people paying $8 a month is more than charging $115,000 for like a 30-second ad spot, multiple times a day. Like those numbers are comparable, and they have to be understood in context. But if Disney decides to come out with Toy Story 5 and they're like, it's only available on Disney Plus, how many people would subscribe? How many people would be like, you know what? It's Toy Story Plus. Like, I've got to watch, or Aladdin 2 or something. Like, again, the amount of nostalgia of content that company has is at the tunes of, or the scope of, billions of people who have been affected by that. And that's not only in the States. It can't be in the States, right? Because America only has 330 million people. So at that point, you're talking about a global economy that cares about the same stories of Mickey Mouse and Snow White and Beauty and the Beast and things of this nature. The question becomes, if Disney, in order for them to survive, needs to continue producing Wall-E and Up and things of that nature. That might be Pixar, but Pixar is on Disney Plus anyway, I believe. So the point is, for them to really get those stories to continue their legacy and their brand of being the best storytelling company in the world, they need to figure out, are they going to deliver it through traditional media, through AMC, right, through movie theaters, or is it going straight to Disney Plus? Because you could imagine if Aladdin 2 is coming out and it was actually good, it wasn't just some bullshit like a sequel. You could imagine, in theaters, that would do, like, I don't know, maybe 200-300 million first weekend or first month in box office. How many more subscribers is that to Disney Plus? Even if they only stay for a couple months. Like imagine you come to Disney Plus just to watch that movie, but you're like, all right, I'll give it a couple months and I'll cancel when I don't want it. That's like 3 months. Let's say you've stayed on. That's 3 times 8. That's $24. The average price for a movie ticket is probably like $15. So you're already, if you just keep someone entertained for the next 3 months, and they're likely going to stay longer than 3 months because, again, you're Disney and the stuff that you have is like insane in your catalog. Plus, if you hit them with the bundle for like ESPN and Hulu and all that stuff, there's just an exponential level amount of growth that I think can exist in the company based upon the nostalgic level of content that they've been able to capitalize on. Now, here's the larger point. Can Disney compete with Netflix? I don't know. Right now, my answer is no. Not only because Netflix has 100 million more subscribers, that's besides the point. Netflix is actually making content for other audiences. Yeah, Disney, you have Mandalorian and stuff like that, but you're not making, which is like a show about a guy who stalks his girl, right? And it's a really entertaining. I don't know what that says about me. That doesn't say. Hopefully that no one takes that the wrong way, but it's a really entertaining portrayal of how this guy stalks his girl and the whole love thing behind it. Obviously for mature audiences. Disney's not producing that. Disney has to invest in original programming. That type of original programming is more types of stuff that goes to HBO, Lifetime, and recently as of Netflix, right? Is Disney producing the Queen's Gambit, where there's drugs and there's sex and there's alcohol? That's not part of the Disney brand. So can Disney sustain continually producing the nostalgic Aladdins and Lion Kings of the world in a world in which audiences are obviously craving more mature things? Now, Disney has obviously been able to survive until now based upon staying within that sort of PG or PG-13 at most lane. The question is, when you're direct to consumer and you're not just a movie every month, how do you get someone as a subscriber to continuously stay and pay $8 a month in addition to the other subscriptions they might have and not cancel if you don't diversify the type of content you're providing purely based upon the brand not allowing you to have that type of diversification in content? Because a You type of show is just weird on Disney Plus. I would definitely check it out if they were, saying to try it out. But the question becomes, is that in brand with Disney? Can they just pull up a Bridgerton on Disney Plus? I don't think so. As of now, I don't think that's what their brand is made for. So we're going to obviously see where that goes. I think Disney has a long way to go before they actually compete with Netflix. Yes, the numbers are there in terms of subscribers. The question becomes, are there 100 million more subscribers, which may take them, another year or 2 years to get? I know they got 95 million in 14 months, but again, that's the initial explosion. Can you actually keep up that rate of growth? Probably not. If they get to 200 million within the next decade or the next, let's say 5 years, is not only is Netflix probably going to be at 300 million, but then the question becomes, how much money do they have to spend to create those type of same nostalgic hits? Because every Disney movie that comes out or every Disney series is not, the nostalgic, things of the world. A good example is Sweet Life on Deck or Girl Meets World. Like, these shows are not the That's So Ravens or Wizards of Waverly Place or Lizzie McGuire's of the world. Those shows, to me, were flops. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up in that generation and consume them like that, but they are not the timeless hits or the timeless Disney shows that we're talking about. Same thing with movies. You're not going to get a hit every time. You're not going to get Frozen every time. So if that's the case, if you're not investing in diversifying your content, Apple's going to be diversifying their content, right? They've invested in the morning show and really mature audiences and trying to create content that is at a different pinpoint of level. Obviously not the same nostalgic brand, but definitely competes with Netflix at some levels in terms of quality of content. So that becomes the question. Can they sustain that nostalgic brand, or do they have to diversify? I think eventually they're going to have to diversify. I don't know how they just stay kid-friendly forever when you're direct to consumer and most of your consumers are not kids. Right? Unless you just want parents to buy a subscription to Disney Plus forever. So I guess we'll see what happens. But Disney Plus, 95 million subscribers, 95 million people as of now cannot leave Hannah Montana alone. Okay, moving on to our next story. Facebook. This news broke just on Friday over the weekend. So really interesting story. Facebook is secretly building a smartwatch and planning to sell it next year. The device, this is reported by The Verge, but The Verge got this from another person. I'm hopefully going to give their information because they deserve it, because they broke the story. The device would have messaging and fitness features. Okay, so I just want to read something real quick off this. Facebook is building a smartwatch as part of its ongoing hardware efforts, according to a new report from The Information. That's the name of the website. Go check that out, theinformation.com. The device is said to be an Android-based smartwatch, though the report does not say whether Facebook intends for the device to run Google's Wear OS. It also says Facebook is working on building its own own OS operating system for hardware devices, and that the future iterations of the wearable watch may run that software instead. Okay, this is pretty big news. The reason this is pretty big news is because this can go either two ways. Either A, this can go the Amazon Fire Phone route, which is like a company that's not meant to really do hardware. And it's crazy to say that because Amazon has done Echo and the Kindle and all that stuff, but not really meant to do the phone type of hardware. They try something and it fails, and that's okay, right? You got to try stuff and it fails. Or it goes the route of, what was I going to say? Or it goes the route of, I guess what I was going to say is it goes the route of the Apple Watch, right? Which is a company that was not meant to really make watches. They were really meant to make phones and things of that nature, but they try a new product and it becomes instantly something that is synchronous with all the other products that they have, and it becomes this enjoyable experience for people, and the Apple Watch has obviously been a big hit. I've never enjoyed it because I'm not texting someone off my watch. I'm not like looking at the time on my watch. I just use my phone if I need the time. If I actually want to consume content, I need a big screen, not this little tiny screen in front of me. Like that to me was never attractive or appealing. But a lot of people in the world obviously enjoyed the Apple Watch and things of that nature. Now, the reason that I think this can go the first route and not the second route is because of a couple things. A, Facebook. You can tell what Facebook's trying to do here. The overall motivations that I think Facebook has right now is that Apple is not allowing users to sort of opt out of privacy standards, meaning when you get a new phone or you get the new update for iOS 14 or whatever, they're going to ask, do you want certain applications to take advantage of your data and be tracked? Most people are going to click no because that's weird, right? The reason we don't click no right now is because there's not a notification and people don't care enough about it, but if you put it in front of our face, we're going to say no. If that happens, Facebook's advertising targeting model significantly becomes worse because now they don't know where you're located. They don't know if you're in Minnesota and can recommend, a Minnesota bar to go to. Like they don't know a lot of things about you, which means if they don't know a lot of things about you based upon the platform that the billions of people that use Facebook on is not allowing them, the infrastructure and hardware is literally not allowing them to know about you, then their business model fundamentally suffers. They're still going to sell a shit ton of ads. The problem is those ads might just not be that quality, which means advertisers may choose to go to other competitors, and that's going to hurt Facebook's bottom line. So Facebook has been taking ads in front of the Wall Street Journal. They've been going really on this rampage about how we need to save small businesses, and mostly small businesses use advertising, not the big companies, which means, if you're a pizza shop in Oregon, you need to be able to target people in Oregon who like pizza, and Apple's thing would stop you from doing that. I don't really know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's bullshit that they're saying to protect themselves or if that's actually kind of true. I want to lead on the side that it's actually true because I've used Facebook advertising before and I know how incredibly powerful the product is, but I don't fully know if Facebook's telling the truth here. It's probably a mixture of both, maybe more on the lens of they need to obviously protect their bottom line. It's more likely that Facebook is trying to fundamentally compete with what they have called their biggest competitor, which is Apple. Right? Facebook has called Apple their biggest competitor. And I think it's because Facebook is recognizing that Apple controls the ability for Facebook to actually get their content out there. So if Apple, or their ads out there, right? Their business model. So if Apple controls the sort of highways that Facebook travels on, Facebook is probably thinking, why don't we just build our own highways? And that's route 2. Route is good segue with the highway. That makes sense. That's route 2. Building it's true that they can go route 2. Okay, this is getting to know me. I'm a punny guy. That they can build a product that is synchronous with all their other stuff. So if they don't go the Amazon Fire Phone route and they go the Apple products route, which is that Apple built a watch and everything's synchronous with everything else. If Facebook builds a watch and that's synchronous with how a user experiences using Facebook, which WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger. Those 3 components of Facebook, I think, are where most people use Facebook in today's day and age. Instagram DMs, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger, and obviously consuming content on Facebook. Again, that's more for the older generations, but Instagram, obviously, for like literally everyone in the world. If you're consuming content more passively, more easily, more efficiently, you're getting messages done in a better way. You're getting more health updates based upon how the technology of the watch is allowing you to track and monitor your own progress, which would happen because Facebook bought a neutral interface startup called Control Labs in 2019 for $1 billion. So that technology, they were obviously thinking about this idea probably a couple years ago. That would probably make your life more easier. And that's the Apple route, right? Apple is like, what product can we build? AirPods, watches, phones, laptops that can make your life more efficient and synchronous within the entire ecosystem of being an Apple consumer. That's where you get Apple TV. That's where you get the iPad. That's where you get all of these features that Apple provides you that make you just an Apple fanboy, not because you're loyal to the company, but because it makes your life easier. It makes it more efficient. They just build good shit, right? Good software and good products and hardware that goes along with it. If Facebook goes that route, that's a really interesting concept, because that means that Facebook is now transitioning from a software company to a hardware company in some respects. They've already kind of done this before because they have the Oculus virtual reality headsets. I believe they acquired Oculus for about $2.1 billion a couple years ago, and that's like an actual physical headset, right? The impact of them buying that is they've obviously recognized that the way people are consuming content is not going to be the same. And I think this watch thing exactly is the same sort of concept of Oculus headsets. Like, this Facebook watch will probably come out, right? Just like Oculus headsets was acquired with Facebook and they've upgraded it with a ton of good VR software and things of that nature. If you have wearable watches and virtual reality, that is signaling to me that Facebook is recognizing something that I think I've been recognizing for a long time, something that I think a lot of people have been recognizing given that they've been starting to consume podcasts more, which is that the traditional idea of scrolling through a screen and consuming content is simply dying out. Like, people are not going for the next, I don't know, maybe decade, maybe in 2 decades. People are just not going to be scrolling through their screens like mindless robots and consuming content that way. And that's the way that Facebook and Instagram make money. You see an ad while you're scrolling. You see an ad while you're going through the Instagram stories. So if that is starting to deteriorate, the reason I brought a podcast is because more people, instead of watching something, are trying to listen to something. So your ears now, because they're more productive. My startup is actually about audio, so go check it out. Again, this podcast, this episode is sponsored by that was such a horrible ad read. This episode of the show is sponsored by my startup. Go check it out in the description. But anyway, because your ears are becoming so valuable, and it's valuable not because like they're intrinsically valuable, but because they allow you to be more productive. And the world in general is getting a little bit more fatigued by staring at a screen, A, and B, because our attention spans are dramatically declining. The rise of TikTok is the case study to prove that. You can swipe into a new content experience every 2 seconds. And that means the dramatic decline of our attention spans plus the fatigue that we have of staring at a screen necessitates there's going to be different ways to consume content in the future. And Zuck's, smart motherfucker that Zucks is recognizing that. And that might be your watch. That might be virtual reality. That might be augmented reality. That might be other things. Apple recognized this a couple of years ago when they came out with AirPods. Apple recognized that they need to transition from a hardware company to a software company, or a services company, which is where they've been rolling out their subscription types of features, Apple TV and their bundle that they're doing for $30 with Apple Music and all this stuff like that. Companies change, companies evolve. And Facebook, I think, is recognizing that if Apple gets to control the highways that it gets to drive on, then maybe they should just build their own highways. And if the watch and the VR thing are the future, if that's where they're recognizing people are consuming content, the really exciting thing is, what does Facebook decide to do in terms of developing its own mainstream products? Like mainstream products, as in, does Facebook come out with its own phone, with its own OS? Not using Google or Androids, but literally developing its own entire operating system, its own entire mechanism of getting people to give up their data more easily, right? Because their business model relies on that. Or does their business model change? Because if you make a phone and you sell it for $500, you're going to get $500 per, phone that you sell, which is not bad, I don't know if they would get away with charging $1,000, but it's not beyond Facebook to be able to create their own product, in my opinion. It's really not. They have the money to do it. They have the technology. They have the brains to do it. It's just a question of, do they have that Steve Jobs-esque vision of what the goal for the product is? That's the harder thing to do, right? Everything else in terms of execution is easy, but that larger mission and vision of what it could look like is harder. So will people wear this watch? I don't know. Especially if the sort of brand of Facebook is synonymous with taking your data and just selling it as much as they can. Again, I'm not anti-Facebook or anything. I actually really enjoy the products. I like the advertising model, all that stuff. But if that's what the brand is synonymous with, Cambridge Analytica, all that stuff, do you want to watch? Do you want to wear Facebook 24/7? I mean, people will wear Apple 24/7 because it's Apple. Apple is not going to steal your data. Apple is standing up to people who are trying to take your data because Apple doesn't make any money off your data, right? So they don't care. So that's a very it's a complicated world to think about. And it's not that sort of easy to sort of dissect what Facebook is trying to do here. Overall, I do think Facebook is recognizing that Apple is becoming its main competitor. And because it's becoming its main competitor, and they have 6,000 employees that this article says working on various augmented and virtual reality projects, then that means, and they came out with the portal. They came out with this whole like portal thing. Kim Kardashian was in some ad of that where like you can just like Facebook video chat someone through this like big screen. That's not like an iPad competitor, but it's basically like a big ass iPad. That's just like, instead of using an iPad, you would use the portal, right? So they've demonstrated that they can create hardware products. The question becomes, do they create a hardware product that billions of people use? Because if billions of people had the Facebook phone, Facebook would be like a multi-trillion-dollar company because there would be no privacy on that shit. And so I don't know why people would buy it. It would have to be something just phenomenal about the design or the soft. It has to be something that cuts into the tiny amount of market share that Apple's has, because Apple's market share is decreasing by the day. Then maybe they have a chance to just have unlimited amounts of data and never have to drive on Apple's highways again. But I guess we'll see what the future has in store for that. All right, on to our last story for the day. Pretty big deal, man. Pretty big deal. Clubhouse is valued at $1 billion. So let's break down Clubhouse. I want this to be a good video for people who don't know what Clubhouse is. I want you to get a good understanding after you've watched this video to fully sort of recognize and get your head wrapped around what Clubhouse truly is, what its potential is to be in the social media space, at least from my perspective, and what problems I think it may have going into the future, but really what opportunities I think ultimately exist. So first thing, Clubhouse is basically Instagram Live for audio. That's how I've been describing it to people. Okay, I got on Clubhouse a couple months ago and I used it. Haven't been using it too much on my day-to-day. It's not part of my day-to-day, and I'll explain why I think it's not part of my day-to-day in a little bit. But it's basically live chat rooms, right? They had this in the 80s where you could just call into like live chat rooms. It's just now in the digital age, it's been branded in such a unique way, and the content creators that they've given the platform to, because it was exclusive for the first year and a half, have created really interesting discussions on the platform that has allowed more people to hop into it and check out what it really is. Essentially, you go through the application, you click on a room, and you can listen into the application. You can raise your hand if you are in the audience, and one of the speakers who are kind of like on this virtual panel to some extent would allow you to speak or ask a question, or you just listen in the audience and you get to enjoy the conversation. What are the benefits of this? It's really like real life phone calls, right? So imagine that you are listening to like two people who are from Silicon Valley. Let's say there's some venture capitalists. These are people who give out a lot of money to companies, just having a casual conversation about what they want to see in a young entrepreneur in order to invest in. And let's say you have a company idea. You being able to tap into that conversation is so beneficial, so important, such a unique aspect of the application, because that type of content, and again, right now content is king, right? Which companies, what platforms, what media entities are offering the most valuable and efficient and productive content for your life? That type of content is really productive. It's valuable because you don't get to have that conversation anywhere else other than being on Clubhouse if those two people are speaking on Clubhouse. But B, it's more natural. It's not like a recorded podcast that you know is going to be broadcasted to millions of people. It's not, some video interview like 60 Minutes on CBS that's very professional and cut and all this stuff. It's you both are on this app and you're just talking. And anyone can come into your room and just listen to people talk. That, I think, is what the main benefit of it is. People are recognizing that they can access virtual and unique conversations at a scale at which they haven't been able to access before. And the more people they follow and the more people that the app ultimately attracts, the more conversations and energy they can get into. This is really important because right now we are seeing the evolution of people wanting long-form conversation. Like if 2020 has showed me anything, and I think Clubhouse exploded in 2020 for the same reason TikTok exploded in 2020. People aren't able to go to live conferences and panels and pay thousands of dollars for tickets at South by Southwest, so they can just go onto this application that has provided the technological infrastructure to people to host those types of same conferences and panels and just listen in. And the type of convenience and productivity that is allowed for people, because it is an audio only thing, they don't have to go fly and go leave their home and go buy plane tickets and hotel and all that stuff. They can just put in their AirPods and go work out and still get access to that content, is unbelievably valuable. And obviously because of COVID, everything got shut down. So where are you going to go to get that type of content? Clubhouse has emerged as the sort of highway for you to go and listen and consume that type of content. I think that's a big reason why it's winning, and I think that's one of the big main reasons why it's been able to have a lot of success. The other reason that I think it's really important, and then we're going to get into sort of its $1 billion valuation and what I think, or why I think it's valued at $1 billion, is that Clubhouse provides a unique networking opportunity for people who are trying to build their followings right now. Like right now, going direct to consumer is everything, right? The difference between YouTube and Clubhouse is like YouTube, this video is going to live forever on YouTube in perpetuity, right? Thousands of years from now, hopefully, this video is going to be on YouTube. I'm not going to be here because like I'm probably going to be either all the way up there or all the way down there, probably all the way down there. But the point is, YouTube has your video in perpetuity, right? That's valuable content for YouTube. Clubhouse, the conversation is live. So if you have, 1,000 followers on Clubhouse, you can engage them immediately by telling them, hey guys, I'm going live at 8 p.m. and then have a conversation that's hopefully beneficial or unique enough for them to care about your content. From a monetization perspective, that content can be monetized not through advertising, which is how all the other companies sort of monetize their content, but by just charging people a ticket to get into the room, right? So if you have 50,000 followers and you're holding an event and you're talking with some famous entrepreneur or something, and you put a gateway to that conversation at $2 a pop, I mean, imagine having 50,000 people, 20,000 of them pay that $2 because it's $2, like it's nothing. 40,000 people have access. You've just made $40,000. 20,000 people of influence. You have influence on 20,000 people in that moment, in that 1 hour conversation or Zoom panel or whatever it may be. Not Zoom, but like Clubhouse panel. And Clubhouse takes a 10% cut. I mean, that's a business model that's very, very easily sort of understandable without having to bring in a lot of advertising into the actual rooms or the actual content. That's where I see Clubhouse as a unique opportunity for individual people to build their following. And that leads me into where I think the $1 billion valuation comes from. Andreessen and Horowitz, I'm definitely saying it wrong. Andreessen and Horowitz, that's how you say it, is a super big multi-venture conglomerate in the Silicon Valley tech startup space. They've invested in everybody. Anybody who's anybody has likely gotten, some seed money from them. And they valued Clubhouse at $1 billion, and some other investors came in. And I think it's because they're recognizing like Clubhouse is 2 million users right now. If Clubhouse gets to 50 million users, and let's say 10 million of them are going live daily, and out of those 10 million, 1 million of them are hosting a paid daily talk, the amount of commission that Clubhouse is making is exponential. I mean, and 10 million users is nothing. Like imagine to the point where they get 500 million users. You have 500 million people using this application. You have, hundreds of millions of them going live every day, having these conversations, and tens of millions of those hundreds of millions are charging for paid events. And I mean, they're just making a little tiny toll off all of these things that are going live because they're providing the technology to do that. That's very valuable for a company. And I think that's where you get the $1 billion valuation. People are kind of freaking out like, how is Clubhouse valued at $1 billion? I mean, like that's the answer. That's how it's valued at $1 billion. It is basically Instagram Live for audio. It has allowed people to have allowed them to engage their following on live audio, which is again more productive because they can do other things while still consuming the content. They don't have to stare at someone talking. They can just get the content and even pay to get the content if it's valuable enough. And Clubhouse just has to take a little bit of a toll and commission. And that's how you get to $1 billion. I probably think it's going to, surpass more than billions of dollars as long as the brand stays good within the next couple of years. Here's the sort of question I have for Clubhouse, right? The audio is not cataloged, meaning like when you do a live talk, it's as of now, it's not being saved in Clubhouse in and of itself, right? And it's not sort of living there forever. And I think if they try to make it live forever, that would provide a couple of hurdles. That would provide a lot more just operating costs because now you have to host all that content and that data on your servers. And maybe that's not the most crazy expense in the world, but nonetheless, it would be there. But B, that takes away from the sort of appeal of that it's live, right? Because if I can go listen to it later, then there's no necessity for me to leave what I'm doing right now and go to the app and be, a loyal consumer of the app. There's no reason I have to come for a show that's being held every day. Let's say if they start paying original content creators to host a talk every day or something, or like a little interview every day. Why would I go there if I know I'll be able to catch it later? At that point, it just becomes a podcast that I can listen to on my own time. And how many of us are consistently listening to podcasts on our own time at the rate at which some of these podcast companies would want us to do that? Like podcast is exponentially growing, but when something's live, your attention is there and it's immediate. You can be sold something, you can eventually pay to get into something, and you just have more affinity for what's happening because it's happening real time and live. most of the podcasts that you consume likely are the podcasts you love. Like if you're a Joe Rogan fan, every day you're going to tune into Joe Rogan. If you're Clubhouse wants it to be, if you're a Clubhouse fan, if you're a fan of the app, just like you're a fan of Instagram, you show up every day, because the only way they make money is if you show up every day. So if they create a model in which you can't show up every day because the audio is cataloged into, later times when you can listen to it later, you're likely going to not go there given all the other choices you have for content, especially if you're laying down, because audio is something that you're usually doing on the go. And usually if you're laying down, Netflix and YouTube is already there. So you need something visual to stimulate you. The reason I bring that up is because if the audio is not cataloged, that's one of the problems I see for Clubhouse. It's like, as a content creator, if my stuff doesn't live there forever, I'm not sure how completely valuable that is for me. Now, it's still extremely valuable for me to go live and be able to have a conversation and engage my audience and stuff like that. And I don't think they need to catalog the content. That's just one thing I was thinking about in terms of, you put in a lot of work and have a great conversation. Usually you want that to live forever. Now, nonetheless, you can probably just record the conversation and upload it as a podcast, right? Because if I'm the creator, as long as I get consent from the other people who are on my panel that we can, record this content, then I could just record the call and then I can upload it later as a podcast episode, and then it can be distributed in that realm. So it's not the biggest concern in the world, but it is something I was thinking about in terms of how they are thinking about audio being sort of stored in their data and in their servers and overall in their ecosystem to get people to care. But overall, man, this club in a house costs $1 billion to get into. Like, Clubhouse is worth $1 billion, and it is fundamentally taken up a lot of attention. Elon Musk recently went on Clubhouse and crashed their servers, right? People were hosting other rooms just to listen to the Elon Musk room because it was capped at like 5,000 people. So it is starting to get, and that's the point I want to get across here, brand equity and brand affinity. And when a company starts to get brand equity and brand affinity, it starts to become synonymous with certain things. Twitter is trying to compete with it. I don't think that's going to work because people don't go to Twitter to get into like live audio spaces. People go to Twitter to see 280 characters of the latest thing that's going on, and they want to consume thousands of those within minutes, right? I don't think you're looking for a live conversation on Twitter. Now, could they still compete? Yeah. Could they still get a lot of attention? Yeah, because Twitter already has so many, millions of people. They can just offer them a new product and be like, hey, use this. But I think when you're building a brand, and when you're building something that's synonymous with a certain idea, then that's a really important thing to protect. And, they've done a really strong job, I think, Clubhouse, of trying to build this mission to have authentic conversations that normal platforms like Twitter or Facebook just don't allow because it's all text oriented. And Clubhouse has made a pretty strong statement that they're just not planning to go visual. They don't want the visual elements of it because you don't need it. You don't need text. You don't need comments. You just need live, authentic conversations. So that's what Clubhouse is. I think it's definitely going to live up to its $1 billion hype. There are some other audio tech startups in the audio space. I have one as well as I end this show. So if you guys want to check that out, the link is in the description. Every show of the Amit Kukreja Show, every clip of the Amit Kukreja Show is sponsored by Audia, my tech startup. So if you want to check that out, definitely go check it out. I made this show literally to sponsor the show with my startup every single day that I host the show. So if you're interested at all, please go check that out. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Amit Kukreja Show, and I will see you tomorrow on another episode.